John's a graduate of LSU. We had a nice conversation about the former quarterback who grew up in Athens, Ohio, where I went to college. So it was an exciting time for both of us. He moved to Orlando in 1987 and took over as manager of parks for the city of Orlando. In 2020, he was responsible for $12.7 million of the budget to manage 116 parks. He's here today to talk about the future plans of Lake Eola. So please welcome our member, John Perrone.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for inviting me and for having me speak about Lake Eola Park. I did want to correct one thing. Chris Wallace helped as much or more than I did for the parade, so I really want to thank him. And talking about Chris actually was the manager at Lake Eola Park for how many years? 8 years, and really turned it around. We were having problems with some of our vendors there. We were not really on the ball with some things when it comes to scouting the park and everything, keeping it nice and clean and everything. And so about 10 years ago, Chris moved in there and really turned things around for us. And now that is one of his opportunities with the city. He oversees that and Lockhaven Park, so I want to thank him for that. So Lake Eola Park, what's your idea of a park? Tell me what you think a park should be. Anybody? Got to be pretty. Got to look nice. Yeah. What else?
Place you can walk safely, exercise as a family.
Absolutely. Safety is primo. Yes. Family. Absolutely.
Different functions.
Different functions is where we're going to have events.
Safe.
Safe. Yes. I think that's probably premier. Looks good. Safe events. Yes. Some version of water. Yeah. That's awesome. So, this is some of the things that you see that you would want to see in any park, right? And how many of you visit a park near your home? So nearly everyone in here goes to a park. What do parks do for us? What's kind of the main things that you expect from a park? So you go there when maybe you just want to relax, take in a little fresh air. They say that people that are near parks or can see parks, when they're ill, they actually reprieve from that rather rapidly, or quicker than they can if they could. If you're stuck in four walls, you're not going to heal or get better as quick as you would if you could see trees or nature. And how many of you actually, when you walk through a park, maybe it's wooded, maybe it's an urban park like Lake Eola, you actually enjoy the feeling. You get to think about things maybe you haven't thought about before. You tend to go back and think about things from your childhood, right? So I believe that parks are some of the first places that you go where you experience other people that are not in your family. The first bit of socialization outside the family and maybe outside of school, you're taken to a park and there's all these people that you've never seen before. You don't know who they are, and you have to interact with them. And that continues through life. Go into a park, it's not the people that you live next to necessarily. You go there to experience that, to see what other people are doing. Or maybe just to read a book or enjoy watching people. A lot of people go to the park to watch other people, right? Here in the last 15 years, 20 years, we see an uptick in people bringing their pets to parks. We've had to make design changes because what happens is people expect to have a place for their dogs, to bring their dogs, right? They get home from work at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, the dog is ready to go. And so we've had to think about that. Simple things like moving trash cans away from the benches. Prior to that, we had to put the benches right next to the trash can, right? Now they went a little further away for obvious reasons. But so Lake Eola has grown. When I first started with the city, we were just getting into the master planning process for the improvements that we made in 1988, and 1989. And that was a $4 million process. So renovations to the amphitheater, wider sidewalks. We thought we were doing a big deal when we went from 5 feet sidewalk to 11-foot sidewalks. Actually, you can see where we added 6 inches on each side now in some places, made it a 12-foot sidewalk. It's still not big enough. We've got restrooms with, 2 facilities in it or 4 facilities in it, depending if it's men's or women's. And it's not enough. It's just not enough. We went from a park that was used to having 200,000 or 300,000 people a year to, during Chris's time out there, over 3 million people a year visit the park. It's amazing, and some of those events that we had there, like 4th of July, you might have 120, 140,000 people during the whole day. So it changes. And one of the things that parks do that we didn't mention earlier was that it's a reflection of the community. What you see in the park is, you see people every day. Maybe it's the Walmart of outdoors, right? Because you're going to see everybody. You might be an office worker. You might be somebody that lives in one of the towers nearby. And everybody uses Lake Eola. And there it is. It's the green spot in the middle of our city, right? So it's accessible. And this is what it used to look like, circa 1920s to 1950s there, in the areas around it. Lots of flowers. What started to happen was Lake Eola started to become a destination. People were traveling to Orlando, and a lot of the bungalows and other houses were actually winter homes for people, right? Had citrus growers and cattlemen, basically. Lake Eola was donated to the city in 1888 by Jacob Summerlin. Some of the history of it, this is a picture of 1956 of the new fountain that was just put in the lake by OUC, by the way. And that's the location of the amphitheater. It's just a band shell at the time. So we're going to talk about the master plan process, some of the guiding principles we used in a design overview. We're going to talk about each one of those locations there. How do we do this? So this master plan process, we wanted to design a park that was going to carry us through for the next 50 years. And so the way we would do that is we had to have a foundation. What were we looking for? So we went to some of the leaders in the city first to determine, where do we want to be 50 years from now? What do we want this park to do during this time? So we had to look at our existing conditions. We had to look at, get all this public input, and we knew we had to talk to some of the stakeholders. So we did that all the way up until November of 2020. Then we went to conceptual design input. So we talked to, actually, it was, if you remember in that time, that is when COVID hit. So we had all these big plans about being in the park, people walking around with notebooks and talking to people and see what they liked and didn't like. And so that kind of all fell through. So we had to go completely online. And we had a lot of meetings planned. So all those meetings, and it was not new technology, but as you well know, when you get on a meeting with people that aren't used to Zoom or Teams meetings, they're all trying to talk at one time, and you got to develop that rapport with each other and understand what the courtesy is on that. So some of those meetings didn't go too well in the beginning, but our consultants, GAI, had a really good plan they came up with, and we had several Teams meetings where we presented, several meetings where the community could have a lot of input, and then we had separate meetings. We had meetings with the people that were living in the high rises around there. Each one of those have like neighborhood associations, but they're for the condos. And then we talked to the communities around there. Eola North, Eola South, the one that's just to the east of it, Thornton Park, and then a lot of the condos again on the other side. So we talked to all those communities, and we talked to their leaders. We talked to city folks such as traffic engineering. We talked to all of the folks, we talked to people at OEC about power and water needs for the future. We talked to not only the park, people that were in the parks all the time, but we talked to people outside the community that visit. So that was an important part. And then we moved into the final master planning, and that happened in one main meeting that we presented it to everyone that had participated earlier. So we actually had 2,800 responses to our surveys, which were separate from all the meetings that we talked about. We had 5 public workshops and 179 participants, and 7 of those stakeholder groups that I talked about. From all those meetings, we came up with what we call guiding principles. Now, I don't expect you to read all this, but we came up with, as we talked about all these things, it came down to 4 obvious principles that we want to use. Sustainability, authenticity, livability, and emerging city. So as we go through this design, you're going to see some of those things that come to fruition. This is the actual master plan we're talking about. And I'm going to bring you around the park, and we're going to talk about some of these a little bit in more detail. But there's some real obvious things that I want you to see, and that is improvements around the amphitheater. The amphitheater, it's used a lot during the year now, but it could be used a lot more. So we did some things around there that we're going to improve the way we use the amphitheater. Pay particular attention to some of these areas where it looks like these elongated footballs. What those are is, right now, there's huge pipes that come from the street that go directly into the lake. As you can imagine, all that oils and greases and everything that comes from those streets ends up in the lake. So we thought we'd capture those and put them through what we call a bioswale and try to take care of that, take care of some of those organics and some of those oils and things, capture them, let the plant material in those areas, turn that into something that's a little bit safer to go into the lake, bring up the ability for the lake to support fishes and birds and those kinds of things, because people love to go to Lake Eola to watch the swans, they want to see the turtles, they want to see the ducks, all these kind of things. And so we want to take care of it. As a matter of fact, I don't know the title of Chris, but he's actually got experience with zookeeping too, so he has a type of certification for that. During his tenure at the lake, he also brought up the level of quality of the health of the swans while he was there. As a matter of fact, Royal Swans, which is in England, they note the fact that we have some of the healthiest swans in the United States. And that's due because we have a group that takes care of them on a regular basis. A little bit of a close-up of what we're planning for. This is Washington Street and the amphitheater, and you can see that there's some new construction around it, but we've maintained what used to be the amphitheater and the coloring that's on it now, but we've expanded the plaza to nearly 3 times as big as it is right now. So we've got some big plans for that. Right now, the circulation pattern for pedestrians comes into the side of the amphitheater area. It's just kind of confusing. It's not real fluid. So what we thought we'd do is take the pedestrians and bring them on the lakeside. And so that gives everybody a different experience. And then if you have a performance going on, then you don't have people walking through the middle of it, right? It's a little bit different perspective of what that's going to look like. We also have some covering over the seating, not only in this area, but then this is going to stay a turf or maybe an artificial turf underneath. And we've leveled that or made it kind of a gradient so that people can bring their lawn chairs out or a blanket, and you can use that area. We increase the possible participation in that area by 3-fold by doing this. Another perspective. And then a little bit about what's going to be looking like down the plaza, so that when you're coming, if you can imagine Washington Street coming up this way, and then there's a T. And so you're still looking out towards the fountain in the background there. But we've got a little bit of water, and you'll see here an actual sign. It's funny, Lake Eola is so big, and it's our premier park. There's one sign on the other side of Washington Street. There's no other sign that says Lake Eola. I thought we'd capitalize and let you know where you were. This might be what it looks like at nighttime. And we brought, even though that some of the structure is new, we kept some of the old style that's there, that's already existing in the railing that's around the amphitheater now. So kind of bring that Art Deco to the front. Possibility at nighttime. See if we can light it up. Maybe this would be what it would look like on July 4th. It's a daytime perspective, and you can see the bold walkway that goes around the back of it now. Some of these areas they just show in green right now, but that would be landscape. And the perspective. And that's the promenade behind the amphitheater. You can see it would be landscape. The amphitheater would actually be right here. But then you can see that people get a little bit better experience of being out over the water. As we move around the lake, you can see on the south side right here, the amphitheaters in that area. And then now we've got the promenade that's near Central Boulevard. And we've made it a little bit bigger, a little bit more opportunity for people to sit around and be in the shade. And we did some ADA access. It's hard to see in this drawing, but it's all ADA accessible. Everything's, and it brings you down closer to the water, so the experience will be a little different. This is a cut view of that. You can see that as you come down the steps or come down the ramps, you can get really close to the water now. Some big changes in this area. For those of you that might know, this is the area that where World of Beer is. Okay, and right now there's a bridge that goes across the lagoon there, and the sidewalk. This area right here is used for farmers market. So, but we've taken that and we've brought it around the back, and this is going to be the new area for the swan boats. So that's going to be closer to what our office is, and make some of that coordination a little better, and then have a nice pier going out over in this area. So like if you have friends or relatives that are going out on the swan boat, you can go out and see, watch them go by and take pictures and those kinds of things. Here's another one of those bioswale, the stormwater basins. Again, catching that water that runoff from the street, trying to clean it before it gets into the lake. This area now will hold a lot more people than it did before. This would be what it looks like on an event day. You can see the difference. Here's all the tents. You can see we get tents all the way around down Washington Street there. So it's quite an improvement. Lots of more space for events. What? Saying, are we tearing down the Terry Plaza?
Terry Plaza, to the high right.
Oh, no, we're not talking about that. No, it's still here. Didn't know it by that name, I'm sorry. But here you can see some improvements, getting some shade out on the bridge, that staging area, and there are the swan boats. A close-up of that. And as we move around, right now, this is the existing playground. You can see we've expanded that area. Another one of those bioswales. Expanded the playground area, a new restroom, and splash pad. People have been asking for a splash pad for as long as I've been here. And the playground's going to actually go to the other side of the restroom now. So, and you'll see in a perspective of the playground, of the restroom, these are just some ideas of what the playground might include. Here's the new restroom. So there's going to be a concession stand and a plaza underneath, so that if parents wanted to bring kids of different ages, they could sit in this area and see both playgrounds on either side of the restaurant. And that can be used for yoga classes, that space there can be used for a lot of things. This is kind of the back view. And the architects, Perrone, did a really good job of designing these. You'll see, I think there's a plan in here with what the floor plan looks like. But they thought about safety. So there's 2 doors on each restroom. There's this is an open air above. I mean, there'll be some screen there, but the whole idea is that people outside can hear what's going on inside, so that if there's a need for anyone to call out or anything like that, there's other ways that people can hear and help. If you can see the right side here, this is Eola Drive, and we really wanted to improve that experience. So we took some of the trees out, not very many of them, but we wanted to make that a little bit more pedestrian friendly. So if you look here right now, there's parking on both sides. Believe it or not, the right of way here from curb to curb is the same as it is on Robinson. But it's all taken up with parking on both sides. And then there's only 1 lane of traffic and then the median in the middle. So we wanted to use more of that. So you can see we're bringing some of the parking to the middle of the street. So we do lose a couple of trees, but quite frankly, a number of those trees are in bad shape anyway. So we think this will be much better, and we can widen the sidewalks and make that experience a whole lot better for individuals getting in and out of cars. This is what it would look like for event day. Use that space, more space for events. This is what it would look like in the proposal. Right now, there's actually cars parking in this area, and it's a very small sidewalk there. You can see we expanded on that. Moving to the northeast, currently there's a very small bridge here that really doesn't meet ADA, and then there's a pond here that stretches across this area, and it as much as we've tried, we can't keep the water moving in it, so we've reduced the size of the pond, kept the same elements in it, and expanded the plaza underneath, and capitalized on some of the views so that when you come in the park from that area, you can see all the way out to the fountain a little bit clearer. So we're really looking forward to some of these areas. There's a new, there's a new overlook that comes out into the lake. It actually comes out about 200 feet. And into the lake, and one's a higher level, one's a lower level. The higher level would be covered, and it would also have swings in it, large swings that people can get in, 3 to 4 people at a time. Again, you see some of the bioswales and the stormwater runoff areas. And then there's a restroom on the west side that's also going to get expanded. That's what that one would look like. It actually has 2 small concession areas, one on each side of the building. That's the other side. That's the new Eola Park. Any questions?
One quick minor question.
Yes.
When you enter from Robinson, there's that statue that they put up, and the lights haven't worked on it in 3 years. Is that going to be removed or fixed?
It's going to be fixed. And we're studying how we can relight that. I haven't found it. I know it just stands there. Yep.
That's really a beautiful and ambitious plan that you have.
Yeah.
Plans. You set a footprint of 3 million. Now, what are you expecting in 50 years?
Well, this plan that I'm showing you right now, the estimate right now is at 33 million.
Yeah, but John, thank you for the presentation. Just a maintenance question. What are you using to treat the water or to maintain the level of safety in the water?
Well, right now, it's all managed by what we call our streets and stormwater division. They have tried to, as As a matter of fact, they've put some strainers in, some other things that kind of catch some debris. But this plan shows the way we're going to use biology to clean the water. So we're going to be capturing it and not letting it go directly into the park the way it does now. Sometimes that can be handled underneath the ground through exfiltration or through filters. It's a little bit too much water to be doing that with in this particular condition or situation. But so what we're going to be doing is creating these areas that will be capturing all of that. Now those areas are stormwater basins that can be then dug out and the debris can be taken out and treated properly and then replanted so that that is going to always be it's always going to be an active area that's going to be cleaning the water constantly. So the water should clear up automatically. Right now, they're having to add things to it to keep it clear.
So our statement and a question. Our statement is, in 1957, Kurt Stant told me that Orlando Utilities decided to make a gift to the city this year. So they gave the fountain. But the Sentinel's headline was, waste the ratepayers' money. It will never be utilized. It's an eyesore. And I noticed with your hat, you got the eyesore on there. So
Yes.
and we spent $1 million in that, giving the original fountain. And look what it's become. My question is, I was told that originally the land around the lake was owned by Jacob Sumner, who during the Civil War was a major supplying cattle to the Confederate Army. He later moved his operations from Lake Eola, his home, down to Bartow and started the first high school somewhere. And I was told when he deeded that lake to the city, it was to stay a park and wasn't to be sold for commercial operations. Is that true, or was that just a rumor?
That's true. And I didn't know about going down to Bartow, but I do know that if we do not use that land as a park, it reverts back to the original fantasy. And I have a hard copy of the entire report here, so some of that information is in the report. If anybody would like to look at that after the meeting, that would be awesome.
Hey, John, really love it. I have a quick question on Eola. Are you able to park going both directions?
Yes.
One direction, not the other.
Yes. What they are actually using what's called reverse angle parking. So the whole idea is that you would back into the parking space. The bumper stops would keep you from like pulling through it. So you back in, and that way, when it's time to leave, you can check traffic a little bit easier than looking over your shoulder back out into traffic. You simply look because both angles would be one way, and you just look one way and you pull out.
Thank you, John, for the presentation. I enjoyed the park many years. I was actually there for the dedication when they opened the mountain.
Awesome. That is awesome. Were you there when Bill Frederick turned it on the second time back in '80? It was, I have to tell you this story because I was standing next to him. And there's a big light switch, so he had to turn the light switch on. And of course, the fountain didn't come on. And so the president of OUC was next to him. And he leaned over and said, "Did we pay the bill?" Typical Bill Frederick.
Yeah, just wanted to ask you, last year or the year before, we had a group of ladies come here and present about their project to purchase the building of the 7-Eleven. Do you know what happened with it, and have you ever worked with them? And also, my sons live downtown, so when I try to get downtown on Sunday, it's almost impossible to find a place to park anywhere around Lake Eola. Have you planned any additional parking facilities?
I'm glad you asked both of those questions. First of all, the ladies that you're talking about were members of the Roslyn Club. And so what they did was they formed a trust. It's called the Orlando Land Trust. And they came up with $3 million to purchase the property, which is where the 7-Eleven was located. You notice it's all boarded up now. They did, in fact, buy the property, gave it to the land trust, and then they turned around and gave it to the city of Orlando. It now belongs to the city. So that's the one-story building that's on the corner of Central and Roslyn. That now belongs to the city, and we're developing plans because we want to eventually purchase all of those properties. There's 2 more properties behind it, one with a 4-story building and the other one's an older house. And we want to connect it all to the park. Obviously, that can't all happen at once, and that's not included in the money that I was telling you about. But those ladies, they really counted the streets, and they're going to have a monument that's going to be placed in the near future, actually, close to what is now the Sperry Fountain. That area, if you're familiar with that. And it's a bunch of butterflies, and it's called the Grandmother's Legacy of Love. And so these ladies, it was a great idea, because this was during COVID. And so what they did was they came up with this great idea to have a sculpture there of butterflies. And you're going to love it. And they got 450 grandmothers to give money for their grandkids. And they got their name on this thing. So we're developing, we've got the artwork is already being produced. We're trying to figure out how to put all these 450 names on it in a very classy way. It's going to be nice. It's going to be like a ribbon. So look forward to that. That's going to be happening pretty soon. I would expect excuse me. I would expect the building to come down in the next 3 months for sure. And then we'll be developing. We've already got a couple of concepts of what we're going to do in the corner. Put something there that can, we don't know how long it'll take, 5 years or whatever, to get the other properties. But then we can continue that design right on through to the park.
During your tenure here as a director, what has been the demographic change you noticed most about who uses the park?
Oh, that's fantastic. I mean, we've seen an uptick. It's interesting you say that, because even though the number of events went down during COVID, the daily users went up, because people were getting out. They were staying home, so they had to get out. And we saw quite a varied number of different folks. We didn't count, but I could see for a fact that there, and just by walking around the park, you hear families from all over the place. I mean, we have kids that walk through the park every day that come from the west side of I-4 that walk through the park to get to the school there at Howard. And it's just an amazing mix of people. It's phenomenal, and I love it. And the other thing that I like about it is a lot of people have reconnected with Lake Eola since the farmers market has been put in, because it drew some people back that hadn't been there a long time. I'll tell you one story. When we rebuilt the fountain, got struck by lightning back in 2014 or so, and it was down for almost 2 years. And so we had to, that was quite an expensive fix, because it burned up everything inside the fountain. But the point was that when we turned it back on, I remember walking on the east side of the park, west side of the park, and there was a lady there, and she was crying. She was probably, I'm not terrible at guessing age, but she was up there. She had great grandkids, I'm sure, but she was crying. She hadn't been to the park, even though she lived pretty close by. And she said, my mom used to take me when I was younger. And I'm just, it's all about perspective. What did Lake Eola do for you earlier? What did you do? How did you enjoy it? I mean, it's just amazing. It means something different to that person than it does to the jogger. It means something different to the jogger than it does to the person that goes to see Shakespeare in the park. Yes.
When my father came to town many years ago, the eastern limits for the city of Orlando was the eastern shore of Lake Eola. But my question to you is, what is the distance around the lake if you walk on the sidewalk?
If you stay on the sidewalk, it's 0.9 miles.
Okay, we got 3 questions, and then we'll wrap it up. Okay?
And just a question, following up the question on parking around the area. I have the same problem trying to come down and find places to park. Do you have any relationships with some of the parking areas that we should be directed to?
Yeah, maybe directing folks to the parking area. there's quite a few paid parking areas in the area. And, you know, the city's looking at redirecting traffic completely too. So there's a plan to redesign, they've already done a plan to redesign Robinson, which will turn into just basically one lane in each direction and a turn lane. And it's going to have also bicycle traffic on that road. So it's going to be interesting what they do there. As far as creating new parking, the city has no plans to buy property to build new parking lots. It's going to be that type of relationship where they have some collaboration with some of the existing property owners. And there is that, especially on the Thornton side, which is where I want to kind of move the park.
Okay, as you refer to as the tower people, I've lived on Eola for 37 years now. It went through a period of time, probably when you were still in college, that the place was an absolute nightmare of hookers and everything. And it was renaissanced, and for 25 years it had beautiful flowers. And now, for budget reasons or something, there's no flowers at all. Are they going to come back?
Yeah. You know, the thing about when you have mature trees is there's no place to plant. The roots in that park are unbelievable. If I told my,
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you know, you've got extremely mature trees. Roots are very, very low, shallow, and there's no place to put them. So in the new plan, there's going to be some areas that are created, but yeah, it's either shade or flowers.
John, one last question and comment. There are several of us in the room here that remember the park back in 1950. I lived across the street from it in 1950. One last story. Memorial Day of 1950. The National Guard put up a 105 howitzer right in front of Johnny Reb statue.
Wow.
And every half hour, they fired a salute. And it was aimed right at Memorial Junior High School where John Reb was. All day long. Boom, boom. That was crazy.
We should bring that back.
We should bring it back. We never found out who owned up to that.
John, thank you very much. What a great facility. Very good asset.
I'm telling you, I learned more today about Lake Eola than I ever knew. So thank you so much for doing that. What an awesome presentation.